reviews that Jordan has. We just got to talk about Jordan. If you Google him, you'll find all of his cool reviews from his buyers that he's worked with over the years. And you are currently a solo agent building your personal business. And today you guys are on buyer consultations. So I don't feel like there's a better agent to be able to learn from right now. I think I just went through and there was countless reviews over and over of your buyers who have loved working with you, especially in the competitive market that we're in right now. And wait, I actually have more. Somebody else sent me. I think Carl may have sent more about Jordan as well. You've been in sales for about 10 years, right? Fantastic. And you've been in the sales industry for 10 years. You started with door-to-door sales and did that for 6 summers until you decided to build lasting relationships, which led you to real estate. You've been doing real estate since 2018. You were born and raised in Orem. You love playing basketball and rooting for the Utah Jazz. You have a beautiful wife and 2 sons who love spending time with you. So take lots of notes. You guys have a great time with Jordan today. We're so blessed. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your time and donating to this and investing in our agents. Have fun.
Thank you. Thank you, Angie. Perfect. Well, I try to keep a low profile, so if I can get this clip on here. If you guys can't hear us, let us know, and maybe you can be watching out for whoever it was that pointed that out earlier. But yeah, thank you. That was an awesome introduction. I think this is honestly the first time I've ever really been introduced to speak somewhere or to give a class. So yeah, I definitely feel a little embarrassed, but excited. So I'm super thrilled to get the chance to speak with you guys today and to help you guys out. I just remember when I was a first agent, I can remember, in fact, Angie, you taught one of the classes, one of these Ignite classes when I was a brand new agent. And I just remember that these were the ones where I learned the most from, because every agent is different and we come from different backgrounds. We have different strategies. We have different marketing tactics. And I feel like there were some that resonated a little more with me than others, but I was able to learn from everybody. And especially as a new agent trying to develop who I wanted to become as an agent, I was able to kind of pick and choose from the different people that came and kind of, decide on who I wanted to be and how I wanted to go about my business. So today, we're going to talk about buyers, and I want to get to know you guys a little bit as well. But I wanted to kind of add to that. So when I'm sure, well, let me ask this. How many of you are on a team right now? Raise your hand. We've got 4 of you, and I don't know how many online. It looks like we have 6 participants online. How do I? Got it. Okay. Maybe in the chats. Maybe let me open this up. That way we can all keep track. Okay. Anyway, so about maybe half of you, depending on who else is on a team right here. Has that been an easy decision for you to be either on a team or on your own? Or is that something you guys have thought about quite a bit? Okay. Okay, perfect. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something all of us agents think about, whether or not at the beginning, but eventually you kind of always get to that point. So I'll tell you kind of a little bit about where, my experience with that. When I first, I interviewed with a couple of different teams and I just didn't feel like we were a good fit. And so I started out just being a solo agent. And I was a solo agent for about a year, and things were going well enough for me. But it wasn't until there was another agent that came and talked with me, and I ended up joining his team for a couple of years, and it was awesome. Like, I learned so much from that team, and it was actually the Wild team. Brett? Does anybody else know Brett Wild? He's unbelievable. He's one of the best in the industry, and he taught me a ton. But even then, like, there's always going to be things that I had wanted to do, because when you're a real estate agent, you're your own business, right? You're an entrepreneur. And you've got ways that you want to go about your business that may be different from somebody else. And that doesn't mean that what they're doing is wrong or what you're doing is wrong. It's just that there may be differences. And that's kind of where I got to that point. Because for me, when I first became a real estate agent, I wanted to get to the point where 100% of my business came from friends, family, and referrals. My style was to work with people that either already knew me or that knew someone that knew me, and kind of in a way have a leg up on that, so that when I do start to meet them, there's already some trust built from the start. And I didn't want to spend money on marketing. And there's, again, no problem with that. But that was where I wanted to go. And so it took some time to get to that point. But once I got to that point where all of my business was coming from friends, family, and referrals, that's when I decided to jump off the team and be on my own. And so now I've been on my own for just about a year. And it's been so fun, because now I get to build my brand and build, the things the way that I have envisioned for so long, and just wasn't sure how long it would take to get to that point. The reason I bring that up and that it's important to me is because when you're working with friends, family, and referral, there are some differences that you have to be aware of in order to make sure that relationship is that it continues to be solid, and that maybe that through your experience in working with that person, that your relationship is actually enhanced. How many of you heard never to do business with friends or family, right? Why do you think that's a thing? Why do you think people say that? Okay.
I've just heard that you probably won't for a while.
Okay. And you're talking specifically in real estate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, maybe not.
Yeah.
But
And why do you think that may be the advice people give sometimes?
their family knows, so they know how.
Sure. Yeah, that totally could be. They know that, hey, this person's only been in it for 6 months. There's no way they know enough to help me, right? That could be. What other reasons do you think people might say not to work with friends or family? It doesn't have to be just real estate, but in anything. Yeah, a lot of times that happens, right? When things don't work out, then it goes, your relationship with that person will never be the same. And I have to admit, there have been a couple of instances in my own life that has happened. But the reason that I am aware of that is because my little slogan that I tell my clients is relationship over transaction. So I tell all my clients that the reason that what that means to me is that our relationship will always be more important than this one transaction. And I tell them there's a mutual benefit to that. What that means to me is that when I was doing summer sales, that thing that Angie mentioned, there was a point where I realized, like, I would talk to somebody, sell them on a product, and after a few minutes, I would never hear from them or talk to them ever again. And I built some level of trust. And I feel like me as a salesperson was missing out, because now they trusted me, but I have nothing more to sell to them, right? They already bought from me the one time, and this wasn't a product they could continue to buy. And so that was it. So I had to start all over and go look for somebody else. So for me as an agent, I felt like, man, if I could find something that I could build that trust with and they just always would come back to me, then that would be ideal, right? But then I also considered the perspective of the person that bought from me. And, we all want to have somebody in our corner that is an experienced expert at something, whether it's a lawyer or a doctor we trust, or a mechanic that we know, somebody that we can trust to go to, that A, is very experienced in their field, but B, we feel like they care more about us and they're going to tell us the truth, right? They're not just out there to try and earn a buck. They're trying to make sure that they help. So we all kind of want that, right? Whether it's a tax person or whatever. And real estate, absolutely. People want to know somebody that's in real estate, because you guys have probably learned this quickly, that it's a very easy thing to talk about for most adults. They like to talk about it. And a lot of people think that they know all about real estate when really either they don't, or because the market changes all the time, things change. So it's really important for them to have somebody that they trust that they can go to. So there's that mutual benefit. And that's one of the things that attracted me, because I felt like if I can help somebody buy a house one time, but they had such a positive experience with me, that then the next time that they look to buy or sell or get an investment property, or if they have their mom or their friend or their sister or whoever that wants to buy or sell a house, they know exactly who to go to. So to me, that's my marketing, which I consider that to be customer experience. Doing all that I can to make sure that my clients are happy and that I go above and beyond what they expect a real estate agent to do in order to make sure that those referrals come naturally. So whether you guys are on a team or not, whether you're paying for leads, marketing leads, anything or not, doesn't matter. When you do have a client that you're working with, my advice would be overall to do all that you can to make sure that they have such a positive experience so that when they consider buying or selling a couple of years down the road, because the average person buys a new home every 3 to 4 years. And so that turnaround time is pretty quick. And if you can get people to come to you, that's so much better. And for me, I'm happy to say that in the past 12 months, 100% of my business has come from not only friends, family, and referrals, but there've also been people that have reached out to me first. So I wasn't making calls saying, hey, please, are you ready to buy a house? Like they came to me and said, hey, we're ready to buy a house, or I've got a brother that's ready to buy a house. Can you help him? Right? For me as an agent, that's so much more comfortable because it's more, and it's also more fun because I get to actually help them through the process more so than I'm sitting down calling and making leads. Now, one last point about that, we all have to get through the grind work, right? And you guys as new agents, I'm sure for most of us probably don't have that clientele base yet set up to the point that you're there, but you can get there. Just keep working hard, do make your calls, and just make sure that you treat every relationship that you have with people at such a high level that when they consider buying or selling in the future, they know who to go to. So any questions or comments about that before we move forward? Okay. Now, before we continue, I do want to get to know. Go ahead.
Are you going to cover like TCs and all that stuff?
So we can talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
Whenever you went solo, how did you determine?
Yeah. Yes. So we will kind of address that because to me, in order to be efficient as an agent, I'm a big systems guy, like have processes. I have checklists of things that I do for my clients from the moment that they reach out to me and say, hey, I'm ready to buy a house. I have a list of 120 items that will be done by the time they close on the house from the beginning to the end. And that's same for sellers. It's a totally different checklist of items that I'm going to do. Things like when they go under contract, send them cookies. Things like, send them this email once they get to this point in the contract or whatever. So I have a giant list, and that to me is my business. Like that's what I've worked for. So I would definitely advise all of us to have some sort of a list that you're developing that's personal to you. There's obviously some things like documents on command that we're all required to do for every transaction, and those are part of my list. But there's also other things that I like to do to make sure my clients are always educated, that they're always know what's going on next, so that they're never questioning what's going on throughout the transaction. And then they're always kind of getting these special little things throughout the transaction to make sure they're like always happy and, they feel like, man, here we go again. Like they're giving me more, right? So that's my advice too, is to make sure that you develop some sort of a list so that it's just easier for you as an agent rather than to think, oh, I'll remember, I need to do that, right? But when you have 120 items to do for every client, and then you have 2, 3, 4, 5 clients you're working with at the same time, there's no way, I don't care who you are, there's no way you're going to do all of those things for all of your clients unless you have it written out and are checking the boxes every single time as you go there. That ensures that every client is treated well, because to your point, if you don't do a good job for friends, family, and referrals, guess what's going to happen very quickly to your business? They talk, and chances are your family knows your family, or your friends know your friends, and so they're going to talk. So you have to make sure that every single person does a better job. How many of you felt like, well, it's my brother, so I don't have to dress up for them today. Like it's going to be easier, I can be a little more relaxed because it's my brother, right? Or whoever. Have you ever felt that? Well, I think that that's a mistaken feeling, and it's natural to feel that way, but I think we need to do the opposite. Well, it's my brother, so I better make sure that I'm doing a really good job. So when we get to the next family get together, he only has positive things to say about me. And then the rest of the family's hearing that, right? Or friends or whoever. Obviously, reviews online can help that too. But yeah. So when I first, to get back to your point, when I first started, I had built out what I wanted to do, and I had my email set to like, when this person gets to this point, send them this email that talks about the home inspection and explains what that's all about. And so what I did was I had a friend that was interested in, she was considering getting her license. And so I just trained her to be my TC, my transaction coordinator, so that when I go under contract, I send her the info, and then I already have these email templates written out. And then she just plugs in the name of the buyer here and the date, the settlement deadline here, so that as she goes through the transaction, she just copies and pastes the email and then changes a few things for them and sends it to them. So that way it's not something I do anymore, but it's something that she does. I don't have it a PDF, but yeah, I'll see how I can share that. I'll figure out a way. Yeah, that'd be helpful. So, yeah. Okay, any questions? All right, I want to get to know everyone's names really quick. So I know Michelle, and I am going to cheat. I have your names written down here because I don't want to forget. So Michelle, right? Then Carla and Amy. Okay, and what is your name? Becky. Okay, and you are? Delia. Delia. Perfect. Do you speak Spanish? También hablo español. That's good. Okay, Delia. ¿De dónde eres? De Honduras. Perfect. Okay, and what's your name? Carolina. Perfect. And you are? Mark. Awesome. And then it looks like we have, let's see, Alexi and Mari and Mariah. I think that's it online. So, and iPhone, whoever that is. So welcome. If you guys have questions online, I guess I should look here. Feel free to put it in the chat, and one of these awesome helpers is going to help me make sure that we don't miss out on your questions and stuff. So, okay. So we're going to talk about the buyer presentation today. So you guys have already talked about other things. You guys talked about lead generating before in this class. Well, I guess I should ask, is this the first, I know it's your first time. Is this the first time for anyone else? First time for you too, okay. So you guys have been a few classes. Okay, awesome. So it looks like maybe you've talked about lead generating for buyers and sellers. You've talked about making seller listing presentations. Have you done that? Okay, sweet. So today's focus is going to be on buyer presentations. This is one of my favorite things because I feel like this is a way to really start off your relationship with this person, whoever you're working with, in a really it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the transaction. And so it's crucial to have this presentation, but in a way that I feel like most people don't do it. So let's start off with whoever this lead comes from, whether they come to you first or you reached out to them. The first thing that you want to do is set an appointment with them, right? As soon as possible, you want to meet up with that person, whether it's in person or online. And I usually give them the option and say, I can meet at your house, or we can meet at my office here in Keller Williams. Do you guys know where you can meet with people here at this office? Yeah, those rooms right on the first floor. And guess what? Every single time I have a buyer or seller come into this room or into this office, they're always thinking the same thing, or they oftentimes will say it. They look around and be like, oh, this is nice. That always makes me feel good, even though I didn't build this place. It's my building, right? It's your building. This is where you work. This is your office. And so whenever they do meet here, it's kind of nice. But you just have to check with the front desk to schedule a room so that you make sure that you have one set apart for you. So if I have a client that says, yeah, let's meet at 3 o'clock tomorrow, then I'll call the front desk Carla usually, and say, hey, can I reserve one of the rooms for a client of mine from 3 to 5 tomorrow or whatever. And then we'll do that. So then we'll meet here, and I usually just say, I'll meet you at the front. So I meet them there as soon as they get here, hopefully, if I'm not late. I'm there before they are, and I'm waiting for them in that room. So as soon as they walk through, there we go. Now, sometimes I don't know who they are. I mean, I know their names, maybe I've never seen them before, and that might happen, but not very often like you can kind of tell that they're not sure where they're going right off the bat. And usually that's going to be the person you're waiting for. It's not like we have 20 people meeting here at the same time, but anyway, so I usually just stand up and say, you must be so-and-so. And they say, yeah. And then I say, oh, I'm Jordan, let's go on over here. So we go to a training room, and then we sit down. And how do you start? Yeah, asking them questions. I'm going to stress this more than anything today. I think in sales in general, and again, I've been in sales for 10 years, and I've learned as a salesperson now, I talk to other salespeople, whether I'm buying a car or, in any situation. And the ones that I feel like care more about me are the ones I'm more prone to buy from, right? So how do I know that they care about me? How do your clients know that you care about them in that appointment? Yeah, you get to know them. And how do you get to know them? You got to ask the questions, right? So you can ask basic questions like, where are you from? And, how many kids do you have or whatever? Get to know you questions, because those are important, but I would consider those like the factual questions. And most people don't go beyond that. Most people stay there because they're shy or they don't want to offend, or I don't know. But if you can dig a little bit deeper into getting to know them, how much more do you feel like that person cares about you, right? Think about your friends or your family. The ones that you're closest to are the ones that know and care more about you deeper than the rest of the people. Like that's what a relationship is. And so we've got to start off with that and asking them more detailed questions about them. This is something I'll share with you guys too. And this comes from Brett. Adapted a little bit by me, but I got to give credit where credit is due. Yeah. Perfect. That's what this is about. That's exactly where we're headed. Great question. I'm glad we're on the same page. So I have this little chart that I made that helps me because every time I have a new buyer or seller and I'm meeting with them, well, let me back up. Whenever my biggest pet peeve when I go to a restaurant is when we order, maybe some of you feel the same way. When we order, the person taking our order comes up, and if they stand like this and ask us what we want, and I start telling them, what am I worried that they're going to do? Yes, because what are they not doing? They're not writing it down. And that bothers me because almost every time I feel like maybe that's not true, but it feels that way. They get it, something is wrong, right? My wife's ordering, I'm ordering, we have a couple kids ordering, whatever, and they'll come back with food and something will be messed up because they didn't write it down. And I don't know if they're trying to impress me because they did it from their memory. I don't care. I just want them to write it down. Same with you guys. If you guys are meeting with somebody and you're not writing things down, there's no way you're going to remember every detail. There's just no way. And so if you're writing things down, what does that show them? That you care, right? Maybe it's cheating like me with the names here, but that you actually care. You're going to take the time to try to learn, to try to remember. So to me, that's what this sheet is. I do this for everybody. I pull out a brand new sheet. I put their names at the top. And this helps me in two ways. Number one, writing things down so I remember, but also it helps me remember what kinds of questions I need to be asking. So I have them split up in 7 different categories of types of questions that I need to be asking. And it's nice for me because then I can write down, for the first one is this about them section. So if I have nothing written down there, I need to be asking them more about about them. What are their jobs? Where do they live? Those kinds of questions. Then the second set of questions, and I don't have to go in order. That doesn't really matter. I want it to be a conversation so it flows really well. I don't want to sound robotic. But by the end of my conversation, I want this thing to be pretty filled out. And it's really easy because if I can tell something is blank, then that's where I need to ask some more questions. So I have the about them section, and I'll share this with you guys, especially the ones online can't see anything. I'll share this somehow. I'll ask Carl how I can share this with you guys so you can do it. First section is about them. Second section is buying motives. What does that mean? Yeah, why are they buying? So don't most people buy for the exact same reason? Because it's a good investment, right? Is that everybody's top priority? No. What other reasons might people buy a house? What's that? Growing family. Maybe they're growing out of their space. Okay. Why else? Okay. Could be for schools. Okay. And are there any other reasons besides those? Could be a relocation for work. Okay. Point is, there's thousands of reasons. One of the biggest mistakes salespeople make in general is assuming you know why someone's doing something. Not everybody buys for the same reasons. Is it a good investment for everyone? Sure, you could make that argument, but that doesn't mean that that's their top priority, even though that may happen. So the only way to find this stuff out on how they feel is what? Asking questions, right? Again, I'm going to stress that a lot today. Most of us spend more of our time presenting and saying, here's why you should use me. Here's why you should work with me. And I think that the ones that get the jobs more often are the ones that find out more about them. Because if I spend 5 minutes getting to know all these reasons why you're buying a house and where you want to go, and then spend 35 minutes talking about why I'm so good, do you think they're really going to pay attention? No, you haven't earned that right. And then if they go meet with somebody else that spends 35 minutes on why they want to move and what their motivations are, and then maybe 5 to 10 minutes on what's good about them and why their process works well in that situation, those are usually where the sales happen. So for you guys, if you're talking more than them, that's a problem, right? Your credibility goes down when that happens. So again, the only way to get them to talk more is to ask them questions. And people like to talk about themselves. That's the truth. And so if you're asking them more and more questions and being impressed and being genuinely interested in them and asking more detailed questions, and they really feel like this person cares about me. So find out about them, buying motives, figure out what are their top reasons for them that they're buying a house, right? And write those down. Why could that also help you later on in the transaction when you're writing offers? Why could knowing what their top reasons are help you? Okay, find a good place. What if things get tough? Do you think that might happen in this market for a buyer? What if they put in 6 offers and they get denied on every single one? Do you think they might get a little tired? It's possible. They could get discouraged. So knowing these motives, you can bring those up and say, yes, I understand it's a frustrating market. We're still doing everything we can to make sure that you win. But as soon as you do, you're going to be so happy because your kids are going to be in that school that they want it to be, right? Or because the day that you move in, or the day that you get under contract with that house, is the day you start building equity. Just like you said, that's your top priority, right? So these things in the back of your mind for each client because you wrote them down, and you don't just assume from everybody. The next category, this is a really, really important one, and I have a story to share with you about this from just yesterday, which is awesome. Positive and negative biases. So do people hear things out there in the world about real estate agents ever? Maybe. Is everything they hear true? Probably not. Is everything true that they hear specifically about you? No, right? Has anyone ever bought a used car before? Raise your hand if you've bought a used car. Raise your hand if you bought a used car and it was actually a good experience. Is that possible? Yes, that's possible. Raise your hand if you've bought a used car and it was not a good experience. Okay, maybe you've had one of each, right? At least. Why? What was the difference? Okay, if the one guy's lying to you about the car or whatever, resulted in a bad experience? That seems obvious, right? Why was the good one a good experience for you? Okay. Perfect. So we're open and honest. So there are stereotypes that the used car salesman, right? You guys have all heard that term before. When they talk about that stereotype, what are they referring to? That first experience, right? In a negative way. Sometimes we realtors get that stereotype, right? Where you're just out there to make a commission, right? You just want me to buy a house. You don't care about me. You don't care about my family. You don't care where we live. You just want me to get a house so that you can earn a commission, right? Do people maybe feel that way sometimes? It's possible, right? Is that how you want them to feel about you? Of course not, right? So why would it be helpful for you to know what's in their heads about real estate agents? Yeah. Yes. Yeah, if they've had a bad experience, you can make it better. You can kind of set things right, set things straight in a way. I usually, if you tell them what things have you heard about real estate agents, most of the time they're not going to tell you negative things. So I usually kind of give them a boost by saying, a lot of people think we're just out there to make a commission. What kinds of things have you heard about real estate agents? Instead of what do you think about real estate agents? They're not going to tell you that what they think. But if you say, what kinds of things have you heard? And then I say something, usually if they're hesitant, I just say, trust me, I've heard all good and all bad things. They're not all true, kind of giving them an out. But I do want to know what's in their mind, because whatever comes out of their mouth at that point is what they probably think. So if they think negative things, that's fine. But now I know so that I can help correct that in a minute. Okay. Now, let's see. So my story. I also want to know what realtors they know. I want to know who they're thinking about talking to. What other methods are they familiar with in buying or selling a house? What other methods are you guys familiar with besides using a traditional real estate agent to sell a house or to buy? Yeah, the discount brokerages, that's one of them. It's in people's minds, right? For sale by owner, doing it on their own, maybe working without an agent. There's other ways that people can think of. There's newer technology. Well, I wouldn't even call it newer technology. It's just the same process, but they make it seem like it's new. Like Open Door is one of them that basically buys your house from you and then resells it. Anyway, there's different programs out there. So I want to know what this buyer that I'm talking to, what are they thinking to do? Who else are they planning to talk to? Have they talked to anyone already? Who do they know that's recently bought or sold a house, and what went well with that experience or what didn't go so well? I want to know these things because whatever they say is important to them, and I want to make sure I'm aware. So again, either I can correct it or I make sure that I am doing those things that are important to them throughout the transaction, and I keep that. That's why I need to write it down, because again, I'm not going to be able to remember all these things for every single client I work with at a time. But if I write them down, I can go back to it and remember. Before I go show a house, I'll glance at this sheet really quick and say, oh yeah, that's right. These guys care about this. Okay, now I'm here and I can bring that up, and then they're impressed because they're like, wow, I can't really remember that. Well, maybe I cheated, but no, I cared. So I wrote it down. That's how I feel. So my story. So yesterday, 2 days ago, I got a call from somebody that said that they're planning to sell their house. It's a client that I worked with 2 years ago to help them buy this house. So it could be easy for me to be like, oh, they're already going to work with me. There's no need for me to go in depth with them. They've already committed. Let's just go and sign the agreement and let's just get it done. But I've learned, don't take shortcuts with anybody. Do the process from beginning to end, because you're going to find things out that you would not have otherwise. So I get to their house yesterday, going through my normal presentation, just like always, asking these questions, getting to know them again, even though I know who they are. And I get to this point where I ask about other agents and I say, what other real estate agents do you know? And they mentioned a name. I said, okay, great. Have you met with them? And they said, yes, we just met with them 2 hours ago. So I'm like, okay, This is not a freebie, right? They're not just handing this to me. I got to earn this. I said, okay, great. How did that go? What did you like about it? They only had positive things to say about her. Totally fine. But they talked about a few key aspects that I kept in my mind, and I was writing things down. The way she did her open house is very different from the way I do my open house. And so I didn't tell them this at that point, but I'm learning about the open house and I'm asking more detailed questions. What is her process for the open house? What and what did she tell you is the purpose of doing it that way, right? And you get to a point where they kind of are like, well, I'm not really sure, right? And that's okay, because that can help you later on. So I'm asking those questions. Now I know this. And as we'll talk about in a minute, when I get to the point where I present, I'm able to bring those things exactly to the presentation and tell them why I do things in a certain way that went above and beyond what they thought the open house was. So in other words, when I was asking them questions, they were so impressed by the way she does her open house. But by the time I presented, because I knew those facts, I was able to present it in a way that to them was like, wow, this way is way better, right? So don't take shortcuts. Ask these questions to these people. You've got to find these things out. It's hard to hear that they're talking with someone else. You've got to compete, that, you know, they really liked this other person. They only had positive things to say about her. And a piece of me was like, I'm just going to walk out. Like, there's no point in keep going because you guys clearly like this lady, right? But no, don't take shortcuts and go through the full process. So happy to say that by the end, they signed the agreement and we're working together, which is great. But I don't know if that would have happened had I not gone through this process, because they were so impressed by her. I probably would have gotten to the point where I said, okay, let's sign. And they're like, we haven't made up our mind yet. And I've been like, what are you talking about? You haven't made up your mind. But no, I figured this out early on. So that's this positive negative biases thing. It's so important. If they bring up discount brokerages, you can talk about them and say, what do you know about their process? What do you know about how they charge? What do you know about the average home sold to list ratio, where if they list a home for a certain price, how much do they usually get for it? Those kinds of things. You can ask those detailed questions, but you've got to go based off of them, right? If they've never considered a discount brokerage, you don't need to necessarily bring it up and go super in depth about it. But if they do bring it up, then yeah, you want to ask more detailed questions about that. So the next criteria is decision-making process. It's so important to figure out first of all, how they make decisions. Are they somebody that likes to take their time? Are they somebody that usually makes quick decisions? I'll usually ask it that way. If you find a house that you like and it checks all the boxes, it seems perfect for you, how much time do you think that you'll need to make a decision on writing an offer? Why do you think that would be helpful to know ahead of time as an agent? Yes, they need to know that things are going fast. So what I'll do is tell them, you'll never feel pressured from me. And that was cool that one of my reviews that was read this morning said that they didn't feel pressured. That's my goal. I don't want them to feel pressured from me. But the reality is they're going to feel pressured by the market as a buyer. There's no way you can't feel pressured, because if you like a house, you write an offer today or else it's gone. Like that's how quickly things have to go. So they need to understand that ahead of time. But I usually put the bad stuff on someone else. And in this case, it's the market, and that's the truth. If they like a home, I'll tell them ahead of time in this appointment, you won't feel pressured from me, but if you like the home, you've got to act quickly. And so that's why it's important for us to talk about what you're looking for, so that when you do find it, there's no hesitation. You can go right for it. Now, one other point about that, though, is that I have had clients that we find a perfect house, it checks all the boxes, and for some reason, they just don't feel good about it. What do you do in that situation? What would you guys do?
I think in those situations, I would they have their own gut feeling about it, and you just gotta trust that.
Yep.
The reason for that, my old friends they somehow convince themselves to buy a home, and it's a messy transaction.
Exactly. Those are some wise words, in my opinion. Yeah. For those that didn't hear, she basically said that, yeah, it can get really messy and that we don't know everything that could happen, right? That they've got to trust their gut feeling. If they don't feel right about it, I would advise, don't put pressure on them. You can revisit their goals and say, well, this criteria is what we had talked about. It looks like this does fit that. can you tell me, is there a specific thing why you don't feel good about this house? Like maybe ask a couple questions because you are trying to figure them out and trying to help them, because even if that house doesn't feel right. I had this happen just the other day. We went under contract and it did check all of their boxes that they had told me. But sometimes buyers or sellers, whoever you are, things have to get real before they really know what they're looking for. And once they were under contract with this house, my buyer did not sleep for 2 days in a row. And he called me Tuesday morning, and it's a friend of mine. I know who he is, never heard him cry in my life. He calls me at 7:30 a.m. And says, and he's in tears, and he says, we just don't feel good about it. We have to cancel. And they had money on the line. So it was a really hard situation. We were luckily able to get some of that back, but it was really tough for him. He said he hadn't slept in 2 days. They just don't feel right about it. They're not sure why. It just so happened that they went to Disneyland 2 days after, which I think was a good timing for him. They were able to kind of ease off and figure out, and they just got back yesterday. And so I was able to have a conversation with them again and just say, well, how are you guys feeling? What do you feel like was about that house that made you not feel good about it? And we defined that their area was this big and now it's a lot smaller, and their price point was this high and now it's a lot smaller. And that's totally fine, because for them, they didn't know all of these things before going into it. But once it got real, once they got under contract and they're like, this is our house, this is how much we're going to be paying, this is how far my commute is. Yeah, I don't feel good about that at all. And then we were able to redefine it and get back to it. So instead of losing credibility with them because they never felt pressure, if I had pressured them to get that house, how do you think I would feel that they lost $2,000? I'd feel like I'd have to pay for that because I convinced them to do it, right? But luckily that was not the case. And so long story short, they're still happy with me, even though that situation happened, and we were able to learn from it. And for them, get things a little bit closer to where hopefully, we'll find them a house. It's just a matter of time. But yeah, you had a question, Mark?
Yeah, well, kind of a comment. I find that being in the business, start hearing about all these numbers there, $450,000, $500,000 that everybody's selling. So you kind of get numb to that feeling where, as like that buyer, any buyer, it's a big deal to them. It's
Yeah.
They don't hear numbers like we hear all the time. So
Right.
you got to be a little bit compassionate because, like I said, the guy didn't sleep for 2 days. It's just,
Yeah.
it's a huge decision. These are huge, life-changing decisions for them. So you have to go back. I find myself getting them because I see all the numbers all the time.
Yeah. Totally. So it's good to kind of refresh and remember that this may be their first time buying a house, or even if it's not, you guys as agents are going to sell and buy or help people buy way more houses than any of our clients are going to do in their whole life. And that's how this works. That's why you're the experts, right? And so, yeah, it can be easy to remember, or it can be easy to forget that this may be their first time or this may be their second time, but they don't do this very often. And it's a lot of money at stake, especially with these prices getting so high. So yeah, you definitely don't want to put yourself in a position where you're pressuring them to get something and then things go sour and they hate you. That destroys everything, right? Everything you've worked for that client, out the window. You're not getting referrals from them. They're not buying from you. And if it's bad enough, they may even talk bad about you. So you don't want to put yourself in that position. So it's kind of a balance because we are salespeople and we do need to figure out, but maybe I have a lot of pet peeves. I'm thinking of all my pet peeves now. I don't like when people call someone that tricked somebody a salesperson, because to me, that's not a salesperson. I watch the Jazz a lot. That happens all the time where they're like, oh, this guy totally sold that call, meaning he pretended to get fouled when he really didn't. And they call that a sale, right? I don't like that, because to me, a sale is, as a salesperson, genuinely figuring out the needs of the person you're helping and finding a way to make that work for them so that they're happy, right? That's what it's all about. Not just finding a way to trick somebody so I can get paid. That's not a sale, right? That's fraud. So yeah, you don't want to put yourself in that position. So it's important to talk about these things with them, about how they make decisions. It's also important to know who else is involved. Who else are they talking to go for advice? Are they speaking with their parents still? Do they want their parents to come and see a house before they write a contract? Who else? Maybe their parents are giving money to them, or a friend is giving money to them. That person's probably going to want to be involved in that decision. So it's important to know how they make decisions and to know who needs to be involved with their decisions. Okay, the next category I have is financing. Most, especially first-time home buyers, are unaware of all the details of how to get a house when it comes to financing. They don't know all those things. Now, you guys aren't lenders, and in your buyer broker agreement, when you're signing stuff with them, there's a section in there that basically protects you from them coming after you if you give them false advice on this. However, we do have to be careful because you're not lenders, you're not licensed. So when it comes to answering questions about things that are not your expertise, even though we know a lot about lending, and it's important as agents to know about it because our buyers expect us to know these answers, you always kind of have to leave the door open and say, we'll have you talk with your lender or whatever. Because the truth is, there's so many different loan programs out there, and they're changing them all the time, and the limits are changing and interest rates are changing. So it's just better for them to a lender, but it's really important for them to know some basic details and for you to know kind of where their situation is. So for example, financing, I always ask, what are you planning for as a down payment? Why can that be helpful for you as an agent to know? Why does that matter? Okay, maybe what kind of loan they could get, and what was it that you said? You're Becky, right? Becky? Yeah, so I don't even know if they even have money. Why would that be helpful? Maybe that's... Yes, and there may be some programs out there that fit, but if they don't have any money at all, you're going to want to make sure you talk to a lender to figure out, can they get a house? But even if they can and they don't have money, what might be different about how you write an offer for them? Yeah. Can't go over appraisal. That's a big thing right now, right? You all probably have known that most, from my experience, most offers accepted are having some money non-refundable really quickly and some amount of money they're willing to pay above the appraisal. But if they don't have any money, can they pay over appraisal? No, they can't. So it's important for you to know that, because then when you're writing offers, you know how to structure that in a way that makes sure you're not harming them, right? Because you don't want to commit them to paying $10,000 above appraisal and then finding out that, oh wait, we have $0. Now what? And by the way, you're losing the $1,000 you did have as your earnest money because that's what they did, whatever that case is. So it's good to know that ahead of time. It's good to know who their lender is, who they've talked to. I don't know if you guys have talked about going to see homes, but did you guys, do you have a general rule of thumb when it comes to going to see homes with people that have not been pre-approved? Exactly. Now, my personal rule is I'll go show one house to anybody, because sometimes that's how you get them to talk to you in the first place. They find a house they're excited about. Okay, let's go see it. But never two, unless they have a pre-approval letter, the actual letter. And there's a few reasons for that. Some of them are for me, some of them are for them. Earlier on, before I had this little rule in my mind, I had a cousin of mine that wanted to buy a house. They showed me this house. I know she owns her own business and her husband has a good job, so I assume they'll qualify. And at that time, they were looking at for homes for the 600 to 650 range. They were 24 at the time. They were young, but they did so well in their business. They're going to be great. I don't need to get them pre-approved. We go see a home. They didn't like it. Next day, they send me 3 more. We go see 3 more. We end up seeing 18 homes before they finally find the one that they want. So then I'm like, okay, now let's talk about financing. You all are probably laughing because you're not going to make this mistake. After doing hours and hours of work, now let's talk about financing. And they're like, okay, it sounds good. So they talk to a lender, they go get pre-approved. Guess what their max was that they were pre-approved for? $400,000. So what do you think they felt? Every single home that we saw after those 18 homes, now we're looking in the $300,000 to $400,000 range. How are they feeling about every single one of those? Yeah, but they're just trash. They don't want them. Guess what? My relationship with them has never been the same. There were a lot of other things that they did that was not so good, but long story short, they still don't have a house. And this happened 4 years ago. If they had gotten a house, they would be able to afford this bigger house by now, and they would be in a much better position. So it harmed them because every home they saw after that was not a home that they wanted. It harmed them because we all wasted a bunch of time looking for these homes that they couldn't even qualify for. And obviously it harmed me in a lot of ways. So maybe go see one house with someone, because that might be the only way that you're going to get to actually meet that person. But you've got to set this appointment for a buyer's consultation with them before seeing another house. You've got to meet with them. You've got to go in depth on these questions, and they have to get a pre-approval letter. Lastly, homes are going so quickly that if they don't have a pre-approval letter, they find a house they like today, what are the chances that they can even get an offer and a pre-approval letter in on time before the sellers accept an offer? They're pretty low. And so they're going to get discouraged because of that too. Even if they can qualify for it, they just didn't have the pre-approval letter in time. So that's my rule of thumb. One house maybe, but no more than that until they get a pre-approval letter. Any questions or comments about that? Okay. It's good to learn from your own experiences, but they say that wise people learn from the experiences of others. So hopefully some of these bad experiences that I've had are mistakes that you guys will never make, so that you don't have to learn those on your own. Saves you trouble. All right, then we have the search process. I like to know what my buyer expects from me as far as buying a house, as finding a house. A lot of buyers think that it's your job as an agent to find them a house. Is that true? It's a trick question.
Yes, but it seems like most times they find them.
Yeah, most buyers do find them on their own. In a way, we help them in a key way, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But it depends on the person. If that's their expectation, can we do that? Yeah, we can. But more than likely, because of technology and how we have things set up, we don't have to. You guys know about listing alerts or hot sheets. I don't know what you guys have called them. What are those? Yep, exactly. So it's an automated search. You set up the criteria one time, and then as soon as a home hits the market within that criteria, it goes right to their email, so they never miss out. That's how we help them find a home most of the time. And that works pretty well for almost everybody. But I just had someone even this morning text me and say, I don't think that's going to help save me any time, which was actually a first for me. I've never had anyone tell me that. He's like, I'm on the MLS all the time, and I don't think that search tool, that's only going to make me see homes double. I'm like, okay, that's fine. If that's how you feel, well, I won't set that up for you, no problem. But most people, they don't feel that way. So, sorry about that. Yeah.
So, I guess there's times that the houses will go live like at 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
And so my client thinks I'm up at 4 in the morning.
Ah,
None homes.
yeah,
Whether, I told them like, oh, sorry, it's an automatic system.
sure.
So they know that I'm not like, we're trying.
Yeah, really good point. That's good to bring up at that point. And I say it's automated because, yeah, that may happen, but not very often where it's listed that late. But I guess it's probably better to not just tell them this is how we're going to do it, but to have that conversation. I can do it that way, or you can set it up to where it comes at 8 in the morning and at 12 in the afternoon and at 4, and any homes that have hit the market, that's when you'll get the email. So it just depends on your buyer and their preferences. But the point is that they get homes quickly, and that's how we set it up for them to make it their job easier. What other websites are there to look for homes? Homey.com, Zillow, what else? KSL, Realtor.com. When I first became an agent, I wonder if they still do this. I bet they do. I got an email. I got my own search tool called jordanfkeele.kw.com. Do you guys have all your own websites? Probably did when you became an agent. Why are there so many different home search websites out there? What is the purpose of all of this? What are the differences? Are there differences between them? Okay. Maybe not. Okay, yeah, everything's on the MLS. Well, what about, are there any websites that you want your buyers to use? And are there any websites you want your buyers not to use? You don't like your buyers using Zillow. Why not?
Maybe more my sellers.
Okay. Because of the Zestimate, the Zillow Zestimate that may be inaccurate. Sometimes it's right on, sometimes it's not. Okay.
My buyer, I have her set up on
Yeah.
I have one in particular set up on
Listing alert.
listing alert, and she still sends me stuff from cold open.
Yes,
You know?
exactly.
So,
It's a totally different company. They probably don't know or care. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you guys how this works. I've broken it down into 3 different categories of home search websites, and I'll tell this to my buyers. I won't tell them at this point in the presentation. I'm asking questions still. What websites do you know of to buy a home? What do you notice about the differences of them? Why? And I'll ask them that same question. Why do you think there are so many different websites out there? Okay. Well, I'm going to hold off on telling you that part for a second so that this can flow a little bit better. Those are the types of questions that we need to know. Okay. And then the last section is the search criteria. Obviously, it's important for you to know where they want to live, how much, what factors are they looking for? Are they looking for a certain amount of square footage? Are they looking for a certain amount of acreage, price range? Like, you've got to know those details too. So obviously you have this big section where you ask that, and to help them know, and to help you know why. Why do they want 4 bedrooms, right? Would 3 bedrooms plus an office be good? Because the 4th bedroom they just want to use as an office. Do they need a closet in that one? Like, you've got to know the reasons why they want a half an acre. Maybe it's because, is it because they just want a big lot and half an acre sounds like a great way to go? Or is it because in Linden, you have to have a lot of 0.47 or more in order to have a horse, and they want a horse. So that has to be 0.47 or more. So those are the kinds of questions you need to ask in order to figure out not just what they're looking for, but why they're looking for that, because then it can help you help them even better, right? Okay, this whole section of questions to ask. I don't have it, like I said, I don't have it robotic where I'm listing out 100 questions to ask. I have them broken down into categories so that we can have a conversation and so that I can make sure to ask these questions. Once this is kind of filled out for me, that's when I'll start to present. And I'm going to address everything that we just talked about. I'm going to address other agents that they've talked to and what other processes they've done, and how they want to go about that. I'm going to address how I'm going to treat if they want their parents involved with the decision, how I'm going to treat that. And I'm going to address their financing, what steps need to be taken. I'm going to address the search process, why I want them using certain websites and not others. And then I'm going to address how we're going to help them in a positive way. So let's take a break, maybe 5 minutes or so, and come back. So this first whole half that we just talked about is about asking
Jordan,
questions. Yes,
I have a question really quick.
Marty.
Yes, hi.
Hi, Marty.
So I like what you said about, that the buyers have a lot of tools, a lot of websites, so they pretty much can find the house for themselves, right?
Yes.
So is there anything that you say to your buyers so that dissipates the expectation that you are the one who needs to find it? And so what are the things that you say that you are there to do for them if you're not going to find the house? Because when I bought my house, that's one of the errors that I had. I felt like my realtor would find it. And since I found it, I'm like, okay, so what did he do? And I know now, but is there
Exactly.
anything specific that you say to your buyers or potential
Yes, absolutely there is. And that's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. If they have this expectation that you're going to do all the work to find them a house, and then they find the house on their own, what do they feel about your commission? That shouldn't go to you, right? Or at least not all of it, right? So that's kind of your point, right? That's your question.
Yes.
So yes, I definitely ask them about this and ask them, what are your expectations for me as an agent? And I do ask them the general question of what are you looking for in a real estate agent? But specifically about this, I also ask them, which I didn't tell you guys, I want to know if they are familiar with how commissions work. That seems to be like a dirty word. We're not supposed to say commissions, but the reality is we get a commission and they know that. And but the way I see it is that I want to earn that commission. I don't want it to just be given to me because I'm trying to weasel my way into getting some of your equity of your house, right? Like that's not how that works. So with this, if I know their expectations for me as an agent, I can either set that clear on what I'm going to do to earn that commission, but I also want them to know how I get paid and who pays me as a buyer's agent, so that they feel more comfortable about the process. So I asked them, Marty, to get to your question, I asked them questions about that. Like, what are your expectations for me as an agent? You could ask them, you know, something along the lines of, are you like, who, maybe just even asking them that, who is it that looks for the homes, you or me? You know, and then have them answer and see if they say, well, I thought you just looked for homes. Okay, no problem. At this point, I'm not responding to any of their objections. I'm not responding to any of their questions. I'm just asking questions, getting all the information so I can write it down. And then in the presentation part, I will address that. So I'll make sure to answer that question, Marty, before we end today. So if I don't get to that, remind me, but we'll get to that when we talk about the search process,
Okay,
how I
thank
go
you.
about that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, let's take 5 minutes. It's 11:04. Let's go till 11:10, and then we'll reconvene and we'll continue on. Oh, there we go.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I, just so that we're all on the same page, I plan to go till 11:50 today. That's when I'll head out. So we've got like 40 minutes, and Michelle is not back yet. So let's wait another second. But all right, so to kind of break things down, we have talked about, I'm going to close this. I don't even need it anymore. We have talked about when, I think a lot of mistakes that salespeople make is they get in there and they just are so excited to tell their potential client why they're such a good fit for them, right? And what are we learning here today that maybe we should do differently? Instead of going in there and telling them all about you, yeah, talk about them, get them to talk for a while. These appointments for me, when it comes to a buyer, are usually somewhere between 60 to 90 minutes long in total. And I usually try and set that expectation with the buyers, because the truth is I don't want it to be a 5-minute rush through it and then we're done. And now I think I know everything I need to know about you to help you out. I want them to know that I took the time to really know. And how many, and here's the crazy thing. you guys are going to be competing against agents that have been in the industry for a long time, that do a lot of business and that are really good at their buyers' presentations, right? You're going to have chances to go up against these guys. But the truth is, most agents do not spend this time with their clients at the beginning. And so you have a leg up on a lot of other agents. I don't care how much experience they have. They're going to work with the person that they feel like cares about them the most. Yes, they want you to be experienced and knowledgeable and all that, but they want to work with someone that they feel like understands their situation and that has their interest at heart, not the salesperson, right? Or the real estate agent. So that's a free thing. You guys don't have to spend any money to get that. You don't have to spend any time outside of it other than maybe brainstorming different questions and practicing different questions and getting familiar with these categories so that when you're there, you know what kinds of things you need to learn about them. But this is how you start your conversation. And you need this to be, I would say, at least 30 minutes. If this is only taking you 10 minutes to fill this out, I would say brainstorm more questions so that when you're in there, you can be more in depth with these people and ask more detailed questions. So once you have all of that, and in my mind, once I have all of this filled out, then I feel like now I've earned the right to present to them and tell them a little bit about me in a way that addresses what they already talked about. And so I'm going to kind of tailor my presentation and focus on the key points that they brought up. If I had asked them the question about, what other real estate agents have you considered working with, and they tell me a little bit about their process, I'm going to make sure I bring up some of those things that are in my process that are either better than what they're doing or the same. So I want to make sure that I bring that stuff up. And how I start is I briefly give an introduction on how I became a real estate agent. To me, that's important because it, first of all, becomes a little more real. Like I didn't just stumble upon this. Like I am passionate about this for these reasons, right? So whatever those reasons are for you, make sure that you tell them. I also think it's important for them to know whatever your background is, whether it's in the sales, whether it's maybe you were an interior designer before, maybe you went to school to be a nurse. Like, what are your experiences in the past? Because you can draw on any of those things that you guys have done in your past to help you become a better real estate agent, right? There's skills that you've learned elsewhere that you can implement here. For example, there's a loan officer that I work with that I consider to be my, what do you call that? My preferred lender. Like if I have a client that wants to work with me and they're not sure who to work with on the loan, I send them to him. And his background is wrestling. Like how could that possibly help him be a better loan officer? Well, I'll tell you what I think, and this is why I like him. He wrestled and he almost went to the Olympics. He was on the Olympic qualifying team. So years ago, to get to that level, I don't care what sport you're doing, you have to have an insane work ethic, right? You have to be able to do that. And so what I noticed with his lending was his work ethic was duplicated from that. He's like an Olympic type loan officer. Like that's what I consider, right? Because he just does his calls all the time. He's on top of things. He's well educated. And of course, to me, I feel like he cares about the client. And if it's not the right fit, that's fine. We'll find you something else. Like he doesn't care. The commission comes last in his mind. And that's how I feel like we all should be. So anyway, that's why I like working with him. But his background is wrestling. But I feel like he learned from that and he can be a better loan officer for that purpose. So whatever your background is, tie that into your presentation and tell them a little bit about that. I always tell them about my summer sales days and what I liked about it when I didn't. And I tell them that same thing that I told you guys about how I feel like I was missing out as a salesperson because I developed some trust with people, but then never hear from them or talk to them again. And I feel like the person always also missed out because they want to have a guy in real estate or have a girl that they go to that can give them proper advice. So that's kind of how I introduce myself a little bit. And I don't want to take too much time on that, but I do want them to know. Then as soon as I kind of tell them a little bit about that, I'll tell them, I'll start kind of addressing these things. And for me, I keep it very simple. I have a binder with pictures that I kind of flip through to show them these are the different points that I want them to know. Because for me, it helps me stay organized. It helps me make sure I'm not missing to say something. Because before I did that, I feel like I'm walking out of every appointment like, I can't believe I forgot to tell them about this. Or like, oh, I can't believe I forgot to tell them about how to look for a house. Like, seems to be a very important thing, right? And we didn't even talk about it. So this helps make sure that I don't miss anything for anybody. Again, I'm a systems guy. I like processes, and I think it makes my job easier. If I can sit down and figure out my process one time, then I can fine tune it later, but like it's the same. And so it's not like I have to come up with this brand new thing for every client. That's just way too much work. So I'm having this sheet with me, and I'm looking at the things that they told me are important to them. And as I'm talking about my presentation, that's kind of the stuff that we'll address. So let's see. When it comes to positive and negative biases, I gave you that example of the open house, right? That the other agent, they liked how she did the open house. But then after I talked about the way I do my open house, they liked my idea better, or at least they liked my strategy better. And I think the biggest thing is because I gave them reasons why I do things this way, and they didn't know the reasons why she did things the way she was going to do them. She was going to do 3 open houses different times, and they liked that. But then I told them about just doing 1 open house and the reasons why. And they like that better, I think. And so that's why one of the reasons that helped. So let me get my thing out here.
One of the key points for 3 different open houses.
Like on why that may not be a good, yeah. And I like to try to generate as much buzz as possible. And so if we're doing 3 different ones, people could come at 3 different times and not see anybody. Whereas if we can do 1 and people come at the same time and they're seeing other buyers, it kind of raises their idea of how much the home could sell for. And so, or of how much competition there is. And so if they're going to write an offer, they're going to have to compete and write a stronger offer, which results in more money for the seller. So that's kind of how I describe that. But okay. So I always talk about communication, how important it is for us to communicate. I don't know what your guys' process is, but I have just a Google sheet that it's very simple, that just has the information of the house that they're interested in seeing, along with like when we're going to go see it, the stats of the home, so the square footage, where it's located, all that stuff. And then I also put in there like days on market, DOM, right? And I help educate my buyer. Do you know what DOM stands for? Most people don't. And we talk about DOM, and I ask them, why do you feel like that could be important for you to know how long the home's been on the market when we're writing an offer? And then I get them to tell me. So that's even through my presentation, I'm still asking more questions to help them be engaged and not fall asleep on me, because that's really important. If I start talking and they don't pay attention, then they're not going to learn, and they're not going to feel like I did a good job, even though maybe the process is way better than anything they've heard, but because they fell asleep, they didn't know about it. So I try to keep them engaged throughout and asking questions, and then explaining and educating and making sure that they're aware of what's going on. And then I talk about the differences of what it means to be under contract versus pending versus backup. Do you guys know the differences between all of those, or are there any? Have you heard of all those terms? On the MLS, we have under contract and backup. It doesn't say pending anywhere. Where does it say pending? Yes, on other websites. Zillow is one of the common ones. It says pending instead of under contract. And so I need to tell them, my clients, that so that they're aware. If they ever see pending, it's the same thing.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I've heard different, like the active TC.
Uh-huh.
I come across it, and I never really know
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah, they're not very common. It's a time clause thing. It's kind of a weird thing, but basically that just means that the seller has an offer that they like, but there's something about that offer that needs to happen before that offer takes effect. And usually that is that they have to sell a house first or get under contract. So they're saying, we like that offer, but if you send me an offer, then that kind of starts the effect that I can tell them, hey, now you've got however they wrote it up, 72 hours to get your house under contract, or else I'm going with this offer. So yeah, that's similar to backup and similar to under contract almost, but there is a greater chance of that. So yeah. And then I just tell them it does happen that people cancel. And so if it's under contract, or if it says backup or pending, there's usually about a 10% chance that might come back to the market. So we're not completely taking that off the radar, but let's move on and while we kind of keep our eye on it. So that way I kind of tell them about that. But this way we're always in communication because I share them with this Google sheet. You guys can do however, whatever process works for you. If you just want to write it down, if you want to have another format to put it in, but something that basically you see the same homes your buyers are seeing and you know what they're interested in looking at. I like to talk about interest rates because historically, do you guys know, like, is now a good time to buy a house for interest rates or is it not? Where are we at? Still really good. Why? They're still really low. I took this chart from Fannie Mae's website that just shows the historic interest rates. I know you won't be able to see this, but this is just I like to show this to my buyers and say, this is where interest rates have been. This is where we're at now. So we're way lower than where they've ever been. So historically speaking, they're still really good, even though they're starting to go up right now. But then I ask them about interest rates and say, like, so I've done my numbers and you guys can know these numbers too. I ask them, if the interest rate is at 3% today and it goes to 4% tomorrow, how much more is your mortgage payment going to be every month because the interest rate went up 1 point? Yep. How much more a month are they spending? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So what I tell them is, yeah, for a $300,000 house, if it goes up 1 point, that's $200 more a month you have to spend to get the same house at that same price, just because the interest rate went up. And if it goes up 2 points, or if you're spending $600,000 on a house, that's doubled. So now you're spending $400 more a month. Or for the life of the loan, that's $66,000 that you're spending more on the house just because the interest rate went up. So yeah, yeah, I actually don't know those numbers off the top of my head, so I don't want to pretend like I do, but those numbers can be helpful and like to kind of educate them and be like, this is why it's so important for you to get a house now, because interest rates are so low. And if they go up, your buying power goes down, like your quality of house goes down for the same payment, right? But then they might have the concern about, well, what if interest rates go down later? Or I've read this article that says interest rates are going to go down, so I'm just going to wait till they go down. What would you say about that? Okay, that's a great response. Yeah, but the home prices are going up. So if you wait, home prices are going up, maybe the interest rate went down, now you're at the same level anyway, right? That's a good response.
And if equity is going up, they're losing out on equity also.
Yep, exactly. Yep, thank you. You're Rodney?
Yes.
Sweet, well, thanks for being here. Mark, did you have a hand up? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and that's just for a $300,000 house. So if you're getting a $600,000 house, interest rate goes up 1 point. Now you're $122,000 more total payment over the 30-year period. So it's good to know these numbers. But the other thing I always tell them is if interest rates go down significantly enough, you can refinance and you can get the lower rate. So you don't have to worry if they go down later. But what if they go up? Well, now you can't go back to that original loan unless you got it at that time. So that's why it's important to get a home as soon as possible. Then my next chart I like to show people is this one that I got from the MLS, just on reports. This is the average home price for a single family home in Utah County. And this is what's happened. It goes back to 1996 is the earliest. So I show them this chart and then we talk about it because people need to know this and I need to know where they're at. So I talk about the trend. Let me get my pen here so it makes visually you can see it a little bit better. First of all, I asked them, what do you notice about this chart? Most people will notice this big bump in the middle, right? But most people also notice that it's always going up. Okay, so then we talk about it and I say, it used to be that home prices were going up like this, and we'll talk about this one in a second, but then the past 10 years or so, it's been like this. So the home prices are going up a lot faster, but then recently it's been going up like this, which is crazy. So home prices are going up at a really high level. And so I'll tell them, what do you think that I like? I don't no one knows this, but I always ask them, what do you think might happen in the next few years? What's most people going to say? It's going to keep going up. And most people also say, oh man, I wish I would have bought 2 years ago, right? And so I'll also tell them, well, what are you going to think 2 years from now if you didn't buy? Oh, I'm going to think that same thing, right? So it kind of gets them motivated to like, I've got to get a house sooner than later. Then I will address this recession, the Great Recession, and ask them about what they know about the Great Recession, how that affected, if they know anyone that was affected by it, how that works. You guys can study a little bit more about that. I kind of give a very, very brief explanation of what happened there and why it's not likely to happen again. But even if it does, when do you lose money in real estate? When home prices drop or when you sell? Yeah, when you sell, if home prices drop, right? So there were plenty of people that were not affected at all by the Great Recession. My parents, they bought a home in 1991 and they still own that home today. And that's the only home they've ever owned. During the Great Recession, they were affected zero on their home because maybe their home value dropped, but then it went back up sooner and now they still own that home. So like they never lost any money. The people that lost money and that were really affected by this are ones that sold during the while their home value was lower than what they bought it for or what they owed on the home, right? And there's other factors on why some people were kind of in a position where because they were stretched so far, they had to sell. Some people could have been a job, but I think there were a lot of people that sold during that time because they were afraid that it would keep going down further and they'd lose even more money. So they just decided to cut their losses. But unfortunately for those people, if they had continued to hold those homes, by now their home is way more than, it's double what it was at that point. So what I always tell my buyers is it's important to have a plan. I know you mentioned, as we talked about earlier, that you wanted to live in this house for 5 years. That's great. But in 5 years from now, as you approach that time where you're thinking of moving or selling your house, let's revisit this chart, see where we're at. Because if the home values are lower than what you owe on the house at that time, there's a couple options. You can either, if you can stay in the home, great. But if you have to move, or whether because you can't afford it anymore, or you move out of state or whatever, then usually a lot of times you can rent out the home for what your mortgage is. So that way you still own the property. You're not losing anything while you move out and do something else. So there's always options, and we'll talk about that at that time. So that's how I tell my buyers. Okay, after that, I talk about the listing alerts. So I told you earlier that I would tell you about the 3 different categories of home search websites, why there are so many different ones out there. There's 3. Number 1, the first category I call the brokerage websites. And the brokerage websites, well, I usually start with the profit ones. There's the for-profit websites is what, again, this is just what I call them. The for-profit websites, the brokerage websites, and then there's the MLS, which is different from all the rest. The for-profit ones are like Zillow and Realtor.com, Trulia.com. Those are the 3 most popular for-profit websites. How do they make their money? Any ideas? Charge who? They charge agents, right? Do you guys know any agents that pay Zillow money? Lots and lots of agents do. Is that a bad thing? No, that's a lead source. Basically, I as an agent decide I want to give Zillow thousands of dollars a month. And in return, when a buyer is looking on their website and they click, I'm interested in this property, doesn't matter, they go through some sort of a rotation, and then that buyer calls you or you call that buyer. So you get their information so that you can call them and you can connect and say, hey, I see that you're interested in that property. Let's go check it out. It's not your listing, doesn't have to be. That's how they work. But it's a lead source for agents. Why do I not want my buyers on a website that's a lead source for other agents? Yes, I don't want them being bombarded by other agents. What if they get stolen from me, right? So, okay, yeah. Sometimes they think they can work with multiple agents. It doesn't matter. They'll just work with whatever agent finds in the house, right? And there's reasons that you can talk about why it's better to work exclusively with you. But yeah, so I don't want them getting bombarded. Here's the other thing about Zillow that is really important for you guys to know. In order for them to be more popular, a lot of times I've noticed that they keep homes on their website that were great homes for a great price that have already sold or already gone under contract, but they keep them on there as active. So as a buyer, I'm thinking, I'm checking these different websites, and man, Zillow always has these homes that these other websites don't have. So I always want to check Zillow. Maybe I'll check other websites, but every time I check for homes, I at least have to check Zillow, right? Because they have homes other websites don't. Then they call on this home and they say, hey, I'm interested in this home. The agent says, oh, shoot, that one just went under contract, but I've got these other ones I want to show you, right? So in other words, they do have, that is part of their strategy, is to have homes on there that are outdated information. And some of it's on purpose. Some of it's just because it takes time for it to update. But regardless, that's frustrating for your buyer, right? If they're calling on these homes that have already gone under contract. So for those reasons, I tell my buyers, as user-friendly as it is, those are not the websites that I think are most efficient for you when you're actually looking for a home. Those are the for-profit ones. The second category is the brokerage websites. Like I said, this one, there's hundreds of websites. Every single agent has their own website. Every single brokerage has their own website. But where do all of those homes come from? If you get a listing, do you go into hundreds of websites and post that listing every single time? No, that'd be an insane amount of work. How does it happen? How do they get there?
They grab them off of the MLS.
Yes, it syndicates automatically through the MLS. So when you put your listing as an agent on the MLS, it automatically will go to all these hundreds of different websites. So in other words, it's not the original source. And again, sometimes because of technology, some websites don't update as quickly as others. So maybe there's a home that's brand new to the market, according to one of these websites, but really it was there for 3 days. Or it says it's active, but really it went under contract a week ago, right? So you just don't know what that is. Most of the time, those are not trying to get you, they don't have ulterior motives other than to maybe have you work with one of their agents, or if it's your own website, work with you. But that's what that category is all about. So then I talk about the MLS and I say, the MLS is the only regulated website in all of Utah for home searches, meaning that the information on there has to be accurate, or else I, as an agent, can lose my license. That's the truth. So it's accurate. You can trust that it's there unless something just happened that day, which could happen. But I mean, that's the best that we got. And the second thing is these listing alerts. I'm going to save you so much time by this criteria that we just talked about. I'm going to plug this in one time. And then as soon as it hits the market, a home hits the market that matches this criteria, it'll go right to your email. That way you don't feel like you have to be spending all this time online looking for homes and feeling like you're missing out on homes that are potentially there for you. Because if it doesn't hit your email, that's because it's not on the market, right? Those are the different categories. And that's why I want them only on the MLS, because no other agent can really contact them through the MLS. And plus, they're my client. So if they favorite a property, I get notified so I can kind of see what they're interested in. And it's just so much easier. So that's what I tell my clients, only use the MLS when they're looking for home search. Except for, as Becky mentioned earlier, KSL is the one other one that I will recommend to them to sometimes use, because what does KSL have on there that we don't have on the MLS? For sale by owner. Yep. So I just make sure to make the distinction that when they're looking on the KSL, there's a thing at the top that they can filter either to look for homes sold by anyone or sold only by owner. If they look for anyone, that's fine. They'll see the for sale by owners, but they're also going to see all the homes that agents post that are already on the MLS. So to save them time, only do for sale by owner ones, right? So that's it. So it saves my buyers time. They're excited because they're like, oh, that's really cool. I tell them that they get an advantage over other buyers that are waiting to see homes from these other websites that may take some time. And so that's the best way for them to see the home that they like and to have a chance at this market of getting an offer in before the seller actually reviews it. So any questions about that? Pretty cool. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay, for me, this is one thing that Amy and I talked about just a minute ago. I then talk about how would you feel if you were to find a house that you really liked and you sent it to me and said, oh, this is the perfect house. Let's go check it out. And then I told you, oh, I'm a little booked today. Let's go on Tuesday to go check it out. And then what happens 2 days later? It's already under contract. And your buyer noticed that, and now they feel what against you? or towards you. They feel angry. They're like, I was ready to go, but my agent couldn't show me the house and now I lost it, right? And then how would you feel if that happened again and again and again, right? Point is, there may be times where either I'm too busy, or if I'm sick in this world, can't go out in the world if you're sick, or if I'm on vacation or if I'm out of town. What happens then? Then what do you do? Now, some of you may be on a team that can help each other. Hey, can you go show this home for me? Now that I'm not on a team, I will tell this. I took this picture from Facebook. Maybe you guys have seen it. The Keller Williams, when we first got into this building, where they had a lot of us out there in the front and took a big picture. I say that we are the largest when it comes to amount of agents. We're the largest brokerage in all of Utah County. And that's one of the reasons, and this is true, why I like Keller Williams, is because at any given time, there are a bunch of brand new agents that are out there that may not have a huge clientele that they're working with to keep them busy enough. I remember when I was an agent, I was in these classes and I just wanted to go out and do some work. I didn't have any clients at the time. My first 4 months, by the way, I sold one house, and it was my uncle who was doing me a favor, absolutely doing me a favor, by letting me sell his house, but I did it for a 1% commission. And I split that commission in half with another agent that was helping me. So I made $1,000 on my first sale in 4 months of being an agent. So it wasn't a lot. I was hungry. I just wanted experience. I wanted to go out there and show homes for people and get that practice down and know how to use the lockbox and all those different things, right? And so I was hungry for opportunities. And then, are you guys all in Slack? That's why I like that they call that section the opportunities one, where now so again, I'm talking to my buyers and explaining reason why I like this is because at any time, if I can't go show you a home for any reason, I have a list of 30 plus agents at any given time that I can reach out to that could potentially show a house for me, for you. And I always pay a showing fee, so you're not going home empty-handed. Did I pay you? Okay, sweet. You had that look in your eye, but maybe that was something else. Something else came to mind. Oh, really?
Yeah, so
Okay. Oh, okay. They bumped you off. That could be.
I just figured, I thought Slack was. Which is why I thought.
I've never heard of Transcend, so must not be. I don't know. But that's what I tell my clients. And I tell them that I enjoy teaching these classes here. I usually do about once a month. First of all, because I'm a big believer in giving back and like helping out. And again, when I was a first time agent, I really appreciated those that took their time to come and teach me, because they're the ones that are in the business and busy and doing things and knowing what's going on right now today. Like the scripts that you have and the books that have been written can be great, but it's also just nice to hear from somebody that's in the business today doing work, right? And so I appreciated that. And so kind of in my mind, in exchange, I'm able to reach out to any new agent and say, who can show this house for me? And yes, I'll pay you, but also that way my clients never feel like they're missing out on a home because I'm not available for whatever reason. And they usually like that. And then I tell them, like, and you're still working with me. Like if they ever show a house for me, it's if you have questions about the house afterwards, or if you want to write an offer, like you still can call me and we'll work it out. But that's one thing I do. So you guys can do that. If you're on a team, sometimes your team has something set up kind of like that where you can help each other out. Or you can reach out to each other as well, because it really makes a difference. There's no way I can show every single home that every single buyer wants to see all the time. I mean, it's just not going to happen. It's going to happen to you guys. We're going to have that conflict, and that's okay. But I have a way around it that does not affect my buyer. So they like to hear that. Okay, we've got 10 minutes. Let's see. Okay, then I talk about some of the things that I want to talk about. New construction. It's a whole different ball game with new construction. What's the biggest thing for you as an agent to want to make sure you educate your client on with new construction? Any guesses? Yes. What happens to your buyer? You just met with them. You have a signed buyer-broker agreement with them. You go in, and then they are driving by a community, brand new community. They see the sign, go see this house. They go see it, they fall in love, and then they come to you after and say, hey, you should be so excited. I just signed a contract for a brand new home in this area. What do you think? Your heart drops, right? Because why? Yes, most of them. Exactly. That's the thing. So if you're finding out about it, if that's the first time you're hearing about that, it's almost too late for you to get paid on that. You're not getting paid. You can try and fight it, and maybe sometimes you'll win, but most of the time it's not going to happen. So it's important for you to tell your clients why they should not do that and how to get around it. First of all, the way around it as an agent is, yes, I tell them, I don't want you to feel like you can't go to them. Just if you do see it, even if it's on a whim, give me a heads up. Let me know, hey, I want to go check this out. I'll call their agent and let them know that you're coming. And that's it. That's all they have to do. I have not personally had any problems doing that. And there's been plenty of times where I've had clients that do that, even though on their door it says if the agent is not present. But if I just give them a heads up, they'll work with you. So, I mean, if you can be there, that's even better, right? But if you can't be there because they just called you and they want you to be there in 5 minutes, like, just call them ahead of time. So that's what I ask my clients to do. Why do you think it matters for them? Because here's the thing. When it comes to sales, if they feel like I'm doing something only to benefit me, are they going to care? No. And again, at being in sales, it's so crystal clear to me to see when this happens. I had somebody knock on my door to sell a Kirby vacuum, which I thought was unheard of anymore. This was like a year ago. That still happens. I mean, I did door-to-door sales, but I didn't know for vacuums, but it happens for vacuums. Came, knocked on my door, and as a salesperson, and specifically having done door-to-door for so long, I get the grind and I know how hard it is. So I let him inside and we had a chat. But here was his pitch. He started out with, yes, this vacuum is great. He spent maybe 5 or 10 minutes on talking about the vacuum, which was really cool. It was awesome. It was a great vacuum. But then, have I ever pushed one? No, I have not. They heavy. But here's what he started talking about. He said, I have this competition, and if I can get 2 more people to buy a vacuum, I get to go to this trip in Texas. What do you think goes through my mind? I'm not going to spend $2,000 on a vacuum that I don't want for you to go on a trip to Texas for free. I don't even know you. Like, that to me was the absolute worst way he could have gone, right? We sometimes do that. Maybe not quite to that extreme, but sometimes we do that. If I tell these people, I don't want you doing that because then I don't get paid, my buyer's not going to care, especially if they're not that loyal, which many people are not. And so you have to find a reason for them to want to do it for their benefit, not just for me. Why would it be better for an agent, for a buyer, to have you represent them on a transaction for a new construction than to have them work directly with the builder? What benefit is there?
There are still things that go wrong.
Yeah.
That agent represents the builder.
Yes.
And the buyer needs somebody to act.
Exactly. The agent represents the builder, and who's paying their checks? The builder. So if there's ever a discrepancy, first of all, they're going to try and protect the builder's back, especially when the buyer does not have a lot of experience and doesn't know what they can or can't ask for, right? That's most people. They don't do this all the time. So that's the biggest reason. Does the buyer benefit financially if they work directly with the builder? Do they give them a discount? I've never heard of it. Does the agent benefit financially? There you go. There's no benefit. Does the builder's agent financially benefit if that person works directly with them? Sometimes they do. Sometimes they get a double commission. Sometimes they get 50% more commission. So in other words, they're incentivized to have them work directly with them. That's what they want. But does that benefit your buyer in any way? No. So I tell them this right now here in this meeting with them. This is how it works. This is why I want you to call me ahead of time. Not because I get paid. Yes, I want to get paid, but it's because it's better for you to have somebody advocating for you. And I do tell them at that moment, there's no financial benefit for you. They're not going to discount the price of the home. That's not how it works. And that's it. That's all I say. If they
I got
want
a question.
instruction, that's great. Yeah, Marty, what's up?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt because
Oh,
this
you're
has
fine.
happened to me where I had a listing and they were going to buy a new house, so they didn't contact me on the purchase. So I just had the listing, but didn't have the,
Yeah.
the buyer, them as buyers. They said because the builder told them that with no agent they could get a $5,000 credit and a refrigerator.
Sure.
So I had so many ideas of what to say, but it was too late by then. But for the future, like what are the things that we can say when they go to the builder offers them a credit and an appliance on top of that if they go solo and unrepresented.
Can I ask, do you remember what the company was, the builder on that one?
Oh, no, I don't remember at the top of my head. It was in this, let's see,
Could be. Like there's some
November.
builders out there that do things in a way. And here's the thing, a lot of builders are great. They work with agents because they understand our value. If maybe in this market, it's easy for them to sell homes to anybody without using us as agents to advocate for them. But if the market shifts a little bit and it becomes harder for them to sell a home, they need us. They absolutely need us. And some builders know that. And so kind of to not burn any bridges, they're wanting to keep us happy. And so they work really well with us. But then there's other builders that don't have that same vision. And that might be one of them. I don't know who that one was. But I will say this, the same thing happens with their incentives for a buyer to work with their preferred lender. Sometimes the incentives are ridiculous. Like I'm also building a home right now with a new builder, and their incentive for me to work with one of their lenders is $500. I get $500 gift card if I work with one of their lenders. But for me, because I've built a relationship with this lender, my wrestler lender, he's given me a credit of $3,500. So I'm totally going with him, right? So sometimes their incentives are not even that great. But the same thing could happen with a builder to an agent. I would say that there might be some fine print in there that maybe they're charging more for the house in order to do that. Or worst case scenario, how much does a fridge cost? Depends on the fridge, could be $1,000 maybe, right? So there may be times where you might have to give up a little bit to get it, but like maybe saying that, yeah, you'll get them a fridge also or whatever, but that way you still get paid their full commission. But I would say that it's so much easier to go about it beforehand if you're educating your buyers way before that even happens. That, hey, if you want to see a new construction, that's fine. This is how they work. Just give me a call before, and then they can do it that way. Because then it puts you in a position that's less likely to have that happen. So that answer your question, Marty? Ultimately, there still may be some situations where you lose, and you just got to live with it, I guess.
Yes. Sorry, I was muted.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah. What happened is that I got the listing when they had already signed a contract, because they told me like we were going to contact you, but since the builder said that we will get $5,000 credit,
Yeah.
we decided just to go with them and have you list our home. And I was like, dang it.
Yeah. But the truth is, if your clients had called you before visiting them, they never would have even gotten to that conversation.
Exactly.
Right? Because you would have been able to call that agent ahead of time saying, these are my clients, they're coming in, and that would never have happened either. So like, there's always things that when things go south, there's always things that we as agents can do to prevent that kind of stuff from happening again, even if that one wasn't necessarily your fault. But to avoid that from happening again in the future, that's what I do. Okay, Marty, there was something that we talked about before, and I think we talked about it, but I want to make sure we covered it, which was, you had a question earlier about the search process and how to educate your clients on what websites to use. Is that right?
Yes, you answered my question. I like what you said, that I have to ask them about their expectations beforehand.
Perfect. So I also ask them about how they understand the commissions work, because most buyers think that we get paid as part of their closing costs. Is that true? No, we have nothing to do with their closing costs. What do their closing costs cover for a buyer? There's really two things that it might cover. It has to do with the loan, and it has to do with title. That's it. It doesn't have anything to do with our commissions for a buyer. For a seller, yes, that's usually where our commissions come from. So it's important for me to help my buyers know that the seller's already agreed to pay us a commission, and they tell us in advance, and that commission is built into that price. So if the home is $400,000 and that's what you're offering, our commission comes from that, from the proceeds of the sale for the seller. So it's nothing extra for you to use an agent. 95% of buyers last year used a real estate agent because it makes no sense not to, because they don't pay anything to use an agent. But here we are as advocates for them, and we're experts in the field, and we can educate them and help them make things more efficient. And frankly, in this market, it's really hard for a buyer to get a house at all without an agent, because like they have to be competitive, and they're not aware of exactly what that means, right? And there's tools that we have access to as real estate agents, as realtors, that they don't have. So yeah, it's always better for them to work with an agent, but it's important for you to discuss that with them and say, this is how I help you find a house by setting up your listing alerts so that you're automatically getting these homes right to your email as soon as they happen. The one thing about that is you always have to tell them your preferences are likely to change, and that's totally fine. Just keep me updated. Because if you decide that, hey, I'm actually okay with living in this other area that we didn't talk about before, you're never going to see those homes unless I change that for you. So just let me know if those change. Or if you want us to tighten it up, we can do that too. So, okay, that's the presentation. At the end, I tell them a few things that I do throughout the process to make them more excited and to keep them happy. And those are kind of the value things that you guys can also think of, like, what are you willing to do for your clients to make sure that the process is smooth and easy and comfortable. I talk about my list of 120 plus things so that they know that I'm organized, and so they know that even if I am working with multiple people, I'm not going to forget anything important for them. They're going to be well educated and know that things are going to go smoothly as possible. And then that's kind of how I close the little buyer's consultation and get them excited. And the last step is to connect on the MLS, which means you go into your MLS, utahrealestate.com, you add client, right? Or add contact, and then it sends them an email that they have to click here to create a password. Once they create that password, then you're friends on the MLS and you can send them hot properties and get them set up on listing alerts. Do you guys have any questions about that process? Okay, that's usually the last step, because depending on their ability with technology, that might be super easy or that might be a little more complicated. If you feel like it's just better to do it right there with them, send them the email. I've done that plenty of times. I'm there with them. Okay, pull up your email. Let's click here. Okay, now create a password, kind of walking them through it. You may do that, but if they're, I guess, more handy with technology, then they may not need that. But any questions before we close? Was this helpful? Yeah. Was there anything that you learned that you feel like is going to help you do this process better? What are your ahas?
I like having something after, because I feel like I'm pretty good talking with them and writing things down and all that. But I like that you had a flip chart after and kind of show them things.
Sure.
So I like that.
Helps keep them engaged too, if you're showing them stuff as opposed to just talking. And frankly, I did terrible at that today. I had nothing to show you. Well, I guess I showed this a little bit, but yeah, whether it's a class or a consultation, it's just better to keep them engaged. So good. What else? What are your other ahas?
Asking them questions like, I never thought about asking like, who else have you talked to? Like,
Yeah.
your previous realtors, and he's just getting that idea now. Because the one time I had a client sent over to me because their agent wasn't like communicating with them on time, was responding to texts.
Yes.
How fast they wanted to. Then that helped me on like, so that was like good to know.
Yep.
What they were looking for. I never really.
Yeah.
Or ask for those.
And I'll tell you right now, it can be uncomfortable asking those questions. For those that didn't hear, just bringing up the fact that it's important to ask the questions about what other agents they've talked to and stuff. Yeah, it's crucial. It can be very uncomfortable because again, even just yesterday, and I've done this plenty of times, but like as soon as they told me all these positive things about this other agent, it gets tough, and you're like, okay, I can do this, right? You got to get that confidence. But going through this entire process, I almost guarantee that the person that they're working with did not spend as much time as you're going to spend, did not ask as many questions as you're going to ask. And especially if you can find out certain key details, like I did about the open house, about their process and their strategy, and then tell them about yours and why yours makes more sense. and just let them draw their own conclusions. And you just have a leg up. Like if you have, Brett used to call these the answers to the test questions, right? If you get the cheat sheet beforehand and you can study that and be like, yeah, these are the answers, like it's going to be way better for you. So cool. Anything else or any other closing remarks?
What's your email address?
Yeah, my email is Jordan, Jordan, F Keele, Keele. So F as in Frank, Keele, Keele.
K-E-E-L-E?
Yep, at kw.com. Yeah, and I'll figure out how I can share this with you guys. I would recommend adapt it to you. I mean, I have my little logo on there. You can change it. This isn't copyrighted or anything. I'm not gonna come after you, but do what you want to make it look the way you want it to present. If it flows better in a different way, but at least this can give you an idea of something that you can do to just help you. My clients never see this. This is just for me, but it helps. And then on the back side, just for listings, when I get to their house, I like to put in kind of where the bathrooms are. Cause then when I'm writing the listing information, sometimes I forget, was that a half bathroom on the second floor? Or and then I feel bad asking my client when I should have just done it right the first time. So when I'm doing my walkthrough, I'll write those things down. And then I'll have a conversation about what they're wanting to include at the house: washer, dryer, fridge, or what they're wanting to exclude. And then I also have a couple things that, like, why do you like your home that you bought? Because a lot of times the reasons they bought that home might be the same reasons that I can advertise why their home is good, like whether it's the area, the neighborhood. And that's about it. So that'll be on there too, just so you guys are aware. But other than that, go kill it. Have fun. Thank you guys. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Jordan. That was a great class.